We're here on a very, very crummy Wednesday. If you can hear the rain and the thunder behind us, it's because it's raining cats and dogs out here. But that's not going to stop us from having a very, very good and informative podcast. It's been a while since we've done this, and we love doing it. It's been a while. You know, we've done other stuff. It takes a while to do this, right? So
It does.
So anything new with you since we've last talked on the podcast?
Not a lot. Just had some nice family celebrations. My parents, your grandparents' 60th wedding anniversary. Other than that, not a lot new. What about with you?
Well, yeah, not a whole lot. It's kind of a sad day for me watching the Florida Panthers win the Stanley Cup again. Sad Leaf fan noises. Yeah, was really hoping for another Canadian Stanley Cup here. It's been a long time, but the Oilers couldn't win last night, so that was kind of a bummer. But I had a good Father's Day. Father's Day was just last weekend, and it's my second Father's Day. But the first Father's Day that I had, my daughter was basically a brand new baby, and so this one was a little bit more special because Emily, had Blair sign a card for me and hand me my gift. And so that was really cute. And, but now, she walks everywhere, and, every time I look away, I have to make sure that she's not about to seriously hurt herself or injure herself. So that's fun. But, yeah, just a lot of work stuff. And the majority of what we want to talk about today is the market. And that's the question we get all the time, right? Mm-hmm. How's the market? So that's what we're going to talk about today. And the main thing that we want to discuss about the market is that there's a little bit of a surprising trend that we found. And it's not just because we went cherry picking for this data. It's because we had talked about it and said, it really feels like this is the case. And then we went and looked at the data and we were like, holy crap, that actually is true. And the thing that we're going to talk about is properties going over asking.
In multiple offers. In some cases, in multiple offers.
And I know that maybe that scares some people, but we're seeing that a little bit again. And we were like, what is the reason? Because what you're seeing on the news and from the Bank of Canada, et cetera, lenders, is that things really aren't that great. And we're not here to say that they are great, but we're just here to say that we're seeing, like, on the front lines a little bit, some properties and data that are going a different way than maybe you would expect, right?
Yeah, I think these are definitely outliers, as we've talked about, because the fact is we have a lot of inventory in Chatham-Kent. There are a lot of homes on the market. So these are definitely outliers, but it's interesting to note that this is happening even in this market. Mm-hmm. So if you are a home seller and your house is sitting on the market, you are in good company. There's a lot of that happening. And today we want to talk a little bit about why we're seeing some of these outliers. What have these sellers or realtors done that maybe have created this interest that is bringing an above asking sale price, or multiple offers, which usually results in above asking.
Mm-hmm. And so just before we get into the actual list of properties, so we pulled properties that have sold over asking in the last 30 days in Chatham-Kent, and there was 123 that have gone over asking. And this list is a day old. I pulled this yesterday, but in the last 30 days from yesterday in Chatham-Kent as a whole, there have been 123 sales. These are residential sales, so there's no condos, there's no commercial. These are just like detached or semi-detached homes that you see most often. And so we found that 21 of 123 had sold over asking. that's 17% of the
which
sales
is significant.
in the last month. And so that's just over 1 in 6. It's between 1 in 6 and 1 in 5. Like, if you were to ask me that, like if you were to say to me, okay, Dane, what on average do you think sells over asking? I'd be like, maybe 1 in 10, maybe. Exactly. And I would think that even that maybe
would be
high.
Yeah.
And we've got 17% here, 1 in 6. So why is that? And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to dive into some of these properties, and some of them we know very, very well because we were involved in the sales. But
yeah, and the reason that this has come to our attention is because we were involved in 2 of these sales in the last month that went over asking. And so that's what really prompted us to start looking at this, to say, like, this is 2 houses we've been involved in that have gone with multiple offers and over asking. So what's happening in the rest of the market? That's what prompted this.
In both of those sales, we were on each side both times, which is kind of nice to talk about some of these things because you get both perspectives, right? So
you mean so one we were representing the buyer, and the other one we were representing the seller.
Yeah. So let's jump to those ones first, and then let's see if we can find, and we'll talk about those individual stories a little bit, and then we'll talk about some of these other ones and see if we can find, a bit of a pattern there and see why they're selling over asking. So the first one is in Chatham. It was on Rom Heath Road, and this is a road that I didn't even know existed before we sold this property. But let me tell you, it's a very nice road in the north side of Chatham, really close to amenities. However, most of these homes back onto a farm field, and this one is no exception. It was a 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathroom, 3-level side split with no rear neighbors. Really well kept home, and had some nice updates, but the location was a really big factor for people coming in. So we listed this property at $429,000.
So do you want to give the background as to why? I think it's important for people to know why it was listed there. What was our goal for this property? Because it was very different than some of the other properties that we list.
Yeah. So this was a little bit of a different kind of scenario. We had some clients who had reached out to us and said, hey, there's a property that's coming on the market that is our dream home. It's the only home we're willing to move for. And we would like to discuss with you how we secure that home. And that means how we sell our current home. So we went over there, checked out the house, and had a pretty good idea of value, and had, pulled recent sales. And that's, we use those as our guide for pricing a home. And then you can make adjustments kind of based on the individual home itself. But we knew that these sellers really, really wanted to go after this home that they were looking at. And it was actually in Thamesville. So they were moving out of Chatham.
And we also had some knowledge that this home that they were looking to buy could have multiple offers, because we had a little bit of background information that told us that there were a few people that were very interested in this property,
and that they were going to be holding offers, which is not very common. And so our sellers were like, okay, well, how do we sell this home as quick as possible and for good money? And so we came to a number that we thought was going to be good value for a buyer, but also something that the seller would be happy with getting that price point. When we listed the property, we got like 7 showing requests in the first day.
Yeah. Before you even talk about that, I just also want to mention that these sellers were very motivated. And so all of the recommendations that we gave them to get the house ready for sale, they went gung-ho and did all the work so that the house really presented its best. Mm-hmm.
And so there were a lot of things that they ended up doing. And the house looked even better when we went to go take photos than when we saw it the first time. And so that just helps the value and helps buyers when they go see it. So when it was on the market, there were 7 showing requests within the first day. And we were like, we might have to pivot here, because when you get that many showing requests in this kind of market, you know that, man, buyers are really seeing that there's value here. They like this price point, because you don't often get that anymore. It's not 2021 anymore where you get people running to a property. You will have people buy a house if they see the value, but they're usually not busting down the door to get to it. That's what we had the first day. So we talked to our seller and said, hey, maybe you want to hold offers. I know that this is something that seems a little bit strange in this kind of market, but maybe we hold offers. And our sellers were great. Just like, hey, we trust your advice, and let's do that. So we decided to hold offers just for 5 days for a full business week, Monday through Friday. And we ended up getting 20 showings on the dot in that time. That, like, 4 showings a day, that's a ton in this market, and a lot of interest. And then on the Friday, we only did have 2 offers, which was a little bit surprising, but you know, when you get that many showings, you're thinking that you're probably going to get multiple offers. They secured a good offer, and it put them in a really, really good position to then go offer on the house that they wanted to offer on. And so that leads us to the next one, because these 2 sales tie together. We will tell you the end result at the end once we show you what happened with these. But the other one was on Victoria Road in Thamesville. Very much an estate type property, 2-acre property, big brick ranch, custom build, has like a gated entry almost. If you've driven on Victoria Road, what I've heard from people since we sold this property is that people have like, wow, you sold that one? I know that house. I drive by it all the time, and I always think, what a great looking house. Mm-hmm. And I think that's maybe why it commanded so much attention too, is that there's almost a, just a fascination with the house for people. And so why don't you talk a little bit about how we approached that one?
So that house, after we went and looked at it with our buyers, we felt that the price it wasn't undervalued. It wasn't a low price tag on this that attracted people to it. I think it was the home. It was the property. It was all of those things. So we were actually a little surprised at the price range that it was at, which was $699. We were a little surprised that it got the interest that it did, but they also held offers. And on offer date, we found out that there were 4 offers. Now, we were in a position, the way it all ended up was our buyer was at that point in a position where his house was going to be sold or fall apart the following day after offers were presented on the Victoria property. And as it turned out, they were in a really great position because we were going in, we had actually done a pre-inspection. So we didn't have to include an inspection condition.
Figured out all the financing stuff with, they had multiple options too there. So they'd done their due diligence with that as well.
So all of that was done. The only condition we were going in was this short condition for them to sell their house. And as it turned out, before offers were presented, the buyer for their current home removed the conditions. Yeah. So we were able to go into that offer presentation with absolutely no conditions, which put them, we found out later, put them definitely way ahead of the curve. The other offers did have home sale conditions. So they got the home, their dream home, the only one that they would have moved for. So it was a great situation for them, for us. We did a bit of creative. It was definitely probably the most creative deal we'd ever done. It involved a lot of strategy, and we got it done for them.
Yeah, a lot of strategy and a lot of work behind the scenes. It was one of those ones where it was all or nothing, especially for our clients. They went all in and did all this work, got their home up for sale. We protected them in such a way with conditions and stuff on offers to make sure that they weren't going to be left homeless or anything like that. Right. But they were in a position where they were putting in all this work, all this time, the emotion of going through all that and knowing this might not work out. And we did the same thing. Like, we're putting in a lot of work, a lot of hours, a lot of phone calls, texts, hoping that it all works out. And I remember saying to my mom that morning, we have done every single thing that we can
to get them the house.
And if this doesn't work out, then you can't hang your head on that. No. We did absolutely everything that we could. I can't think of anything else. And luckily it did work out, and we had some really, really happy clients who were sellers and buyers, and then really happy buyers of their home. He was thrilled. And then the sellers of Victoria were very happy to hear that it was going to a good family. So the Romheath property, which we sold, we had it at $429. It ended up selling for $465. So, that's a pretty good price point, well over asking. And then the one on Victoria was listed at $699.9, so essentially $700,000. It sold for $711,000, so just slightly over asking. And the conditions and the terms of both of the offers were significant, because when you don't have a home to sell, you automatically get bumped to the front of the line, especially on a higher price point like $700,000. You don't see somebody going in without a home to sell very often. So that's what really put our guys ahead. Now, even if you have simple conditions like financing, inspection, which, happened on the Romheath property, that's also it's a really great thing for you as a buyer when you don't have that home to sell. So those two were connected, and we had a direct involvement in both, on both sides. But there are some other ones on this list. And before we actually went on the podcast here, we were talking about this list. And there's one real big fact that you mentioned that I didn't even notice. And what was that?
So how many properties did we say are on this list? 21, did you say?
20, yeah. So 21.
21. So out of these 21 that sold over asking, only 5 of them were in Chatham, the city of Chatham.
Yeah, that's crazy. Again, another stat that I would have never, I would have been like, no, Chatham probably performs the best.
Yeah, but some of these, quite a few of them are kind of, some are in Wheatley, some are in Tilbury. So things closer to Windsor seem to do well, but a lot of them were more country properties. And what we're finding is there are a lot of buyers looking for that kind of property. One of the ones that I don't know what it's going to sell for, but I showed it to a client, and it had 4 offers. It's now conditionally sold. When I look at that house, the thing that I think people loved about it is it was just outside of the city, and it also was beautifully done inside. So the decorating was gorgeous. You walked into it and you immediately fell in love with it. And I think some of the things that we've realized when we look at some of these properties is that something specific as far as a location or the style of the home, those are things that are attracting a lot of attention. something that is maybe out in the country a bit, that has a bit of property. Those are attracting a good amount of attention. The other thing is a home that is beautifully presented is also attracting attention.
Mm-hmm.
So those are two things that, and maybe you can talk more about pricing, but those are two things that we're noticing are definitely, if you have those two things, you have a leg up.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And when it comes to the pricing aspect, like I wasn't in all these homes that were on the list, so I don't know exactly, but we're just kind of rolling with overall themes that we're seeing. So the first two on the list, the first one was, it's a brick bungalow in Wallaceburg that was listed at $219 and it was 3-bedroom, 1-bath. I mean, like, to me right away, I'm saying it says that it's being sold as is, and it probably didn't have the best, it wasn't show ready, I guess what you could say. But when you've got a brick bungalow and Wallaceburg does relatively well, there's still lots of people looking in Wallaceburg. When you have a brick bungalow at $219,900 with 3 bedrooms, I know right away looking at that that's a great price point. And you're going to get people who want to see it. And sure enough, that sells $15,000 over asking.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm just noticing, 8 of these were priced under $350,000. So we're still seeing a lot of first-time home buyers in the market. And we're also seeing people who are looking for something in that price range. So I think anything that is priced lower is going to have a good amount of interest. Anything below $350,000 is usually going to have a good amount of interest if it is priced correctly. Mm-hmm. And that's what we're seeing with 8 of these going above asking that were priced $350,000 and below.
Yeah, like I can see things, each one of these properties, well, I won't say every single one of them, but most of them on the list, as soon as I look at the price point, I think that's a solid price point. Like, for example, I mean, like you've got an all brick bungalow in Chatham with a garage for $299,900 in a good area. Like, and then it sells $40,000 over asking. That's not the norm. That doesn't happen very often, but these sellers or their agents, whoever is kind of pitching these ideas of how to list and market the property are getting enough people in the door and getting enough interest at these price points that they're commanding a solid price tag. Because let's say, for example, this property, if you were to list it for $340,000 or $339,000, do you get the right interest? It might be worth that. $340,000, but if you list it for $340,000, do people get as excited about it? Maybe not. So that $299,000 really did drive the price, and I'm just seeing everything on this list. Like, again, here's one on in Chatham, a brick bungalow. Says 1,400 square foot, Southeast Chatham, full brick bungalow, and I believe it had a full basement as well with living space. $429,900. Like, to me, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, like that's a really nice price point for a house like that. It ends up selling $10,000 over the asking price. It's not crazy over asking, but people see the value.
And I think that's the key, is that, we're also seeing a lot of homes where the price is continuing to be dropped. And one of the hard conversations that you have to have with somebody who is looking to sell their home, and they're hard conversations, but we believe they are critical conversations to have with sellers, is that you have to price your home at the right spot. Overpricing your home is probably not going to get you the results you want. Slightly underpricing, we're seeing, is getting some people some really good results. But we are not in the market. We all wish we were in the market of a couple years ago. We are definitely not in that market, and some people still feel that their home is worth more than it actually is. So it's really important that when you are pricing a home, that your realtor, who you're trusting their experience and their judgment, that when they show you those comparables, which they always should, when they show you those comparables and let you know what other homes have sold for, that you really value that information and you take it. That should be your starting point as to where you're listing your home.
Totally agree. And there are outliers. Sometimes there are properties that we feel are well priced, whether they be our own listings or other listings in town that we think are good value, and they just don't sell as quickly, or they don't sell over asking, or even sell for asking. This is just an example of some things that the positioning seemed to be right, and that is really the theme of a lot of these. Not all of them, because I'm not saying that I think that all of these on the list should have gone over asking. I'm just being honest. I don't agree with it. But there's also properties that I see that aren't sold yet that I'm like, that should have been sold a long time ago. That's a great house, good price. There's no rhyme or reason for it. And that's kind of the market we're in too, right? But the good positioning with the price point, comparing it to things that have sold before, what you're up against currently, you position that well with those other prices, you set yourself up probably for some good success. And that is the overall theme here: positioning. Not location. That's my new thing. Is the most important thing right now in the marketplace. And trust your realtor.
Yeah. It's interesting because over the last couple of days, I've seen a couple of price reductions. And when I look at the history, these homes have been reduced considerably, like $70,000 to $80,000 reduction.
That's a lot of money.
That overpricing your home from the beginning is, we always say, it's kind of like that free fall. You're going to come down in that free fall. And, I hear sellers say, but I want to get this much money for my home. And unfortunately, the market will dictate what your home is worth. Trust your realtors. They're going to have, for us anyways, we're going to have the difficult conversations with you, but we say it from a place of believing that we are good at positioning homes in the market.
So price your home well, and you will very, very likely have a good result. Not always the case, but it gives you the best chance. So that's the name of the game here. We've probably talked about this more than once, but with how the market is going, we just wanted to bring up some of these things that, there are some people that are having some really, really great success as sellers. And hopefully, if you're considering selling, that gives you some confidence that I can follow suit if if me and my realtor really do our homework and we really think about these things, position it well, make the property look its best, then we can have a really, really great result and hopefully a short amount of time. Anything else before we sign off?
If you're looking to sell or to buy and you want honest advice, because we will always give you honest advice, reach out to us. Or if you're just interested in what's happening in the market, we're always happy to talk real estate. Yeah.
And if you want to know what others have said about us, we really encourage you to check out our Google reviews. We have 75 5-star reviews on Google. Those are all past clients. There's no bots there. Those are all real people who have given their own real stories. And, there are some common themes in some of those, like being trustworthy and giving honest advice. And that means the absolute world to us because that's what we try to do day in and day out. We will always have the hard conversations, and we will always do the right thing, whether that means getting the business or not getting the business. So if you're looking to work with a team like that, we would love to chat with you. Please reach out to us. And until next time, cheers.